to display honesty, integrity, and good faith to the beneficiaries of the public trust, who are the sovereign and private people they serve. As fiduciaries of the public trust, public officers must at all times, without exception, display honesty, integrity, and good faith toward the beneficiaries. How do you go with that? It seems quite the opposite, doesn't it? Number 2, fiduciaries have the duty to bear the utmost fidelity to the public trust created by the Constitution that were created, ordained and established by the people and for the posterity, who were given a certified receipt to serve for indemnification of the spoliated owner, who are the grantors and the beneficiaries of the United States of the public trust. The limitations placed upon the actions of the fiduciaries of the trust instruments, the constitutions, are absolute. These limitations include, but are not limited to: A, the prohibition against impairing the obligation of contracts, i.e. 12 U.S.C. 95A, rules of usufruct, rules of war, international law, Declaration of Independence. B, the prohibition against the taking of private property or unalienable rights, unalienable natural inherent rights for public use without just compensation. And C, in general, the prohibition against trespass of another man's rights, liberty, or property, specifically those natural inherent rights freely given to a man made by his creator. Number 3, fiduciaries who, by acts of commission or omission, impair the obligation of contracts, especially contracts between the posterity and the United States, denigrate the good name of the state, instill reproach among the posterity for all men who occupy public office, are disloyal to the Constitution, and lack integrity, act in bad faith, are in breach of their fiduciary duty. Fiduciaries who, by act of commission or omission, take, seize, or confiscate private property for public use without full disclosure, instruction, and just compensation, denigrate the good name of the state, and instill reproach among the posterity for all men who occupy public office, are disloyal to the Constitution, act dishonestly, lack integrity, act in bad faith, and are in breach of their fiduciary duty. Number 5, fiduciaries have a duty of full disclosure to beneficiaries or the posterity of the corporate trust of the United States, to conceal or fail to disclose that corporate statutes do not apply to all men in their private capacity, exercising natural inherent rights, is deceit, dishonesty, bad faith, and a breach of fiduciary duty. To conceal or fail to disclose that a registration of private property as a future interest of everything ultimately done in that name provides benefit with the corporate state, such as a registering a birth event, and presumptively grants the corporate state control over man's private property or over a man's unalienable natural inherent rights freely given to him by his creator, is deceit, dishonesty, bad faith, and breach of fiduciary duty. Number 6, to conceal or fail to disclose that registering a birth event with the corporate state creates an apothecation to the corporate state of the private property which the corporate state then uses to make profits therefrom, such as using the private property as collateral for the issuance of bonds, the proceeds of which run the corporation's operations, is deceit, dishonesty, bad faith, and a breach of fiduciary duty. Let me just stop a second. Again, I had previously discussed, some people believe that the name, well, aside, it's been proven that the name is an estate, and that goes back to the IRS, which is when you get a 1099 or a W-2 form, the IRS classifies that as a tax class 5 form, which is an estate and gift tax. And then I went over the infant and blah, blah, blah. That you can go back to the Peaceful Inhabitant video for that information. But again, some people believe, getting back to that, that the estate is their estate. I do not believe that. I've gone back and forth with that. If you're believing like I do in the rule of usufruct, well, they confiscate everything. Not a problem. I surrender whatever is left, give them a signature by accommodation to and for the account of the United States without recourse. I love it. Not a problem. They're responsible. The one who owns receives the benefit subject to the liability. If I were the owner of the original title, there are rules and laws that would apply to that. Boris, who I have tremendous respect for, and you can check out his website, iamsomedude.com. He goes in much more detail, and he's been a tremendous help along with many others to get my head wrapped around this stuff. Yes, I don't just copy somebody else's stuff. I don't believe in that. I really want to understand it and see what resonates for me. I do not recommend you copy this stuff, but it's certainly to give you an idea where I come from and to see what resonates with you. You know, if you think it's your estate and those Sestake trust funds are yours and you want to claim it, I believe when you own something, you have to pay the taxes, be responsible, whatever. So in going back to this, when I say they have seized without full disclosure, which I consider to be unconscionable, an unconscionable act, everything I do, because you have to use a name to do commerce. It doesn't matter if I run out to the store and get food, I have shelter, it's not rented to or owned by Anthony, it's owned by Anthony Rubio, it's owned by a name. You can't have a bank account. Obviously, you work, the check you get is not to you, but it's to the name. So they have a very unique, and it's a very interesting system. I'm not angry, like I said, over it, but again, I'm just a mere user because, like I said, this government, they own the bank accounts, they own the house, they own the car. When you go buy a new car, the manufacturer's certificate of origin goes to the dealer. Then the dealer registers the car. The manufacturer's certificate of origin goes up to the state. They hold on to it and they issue you a title to the car. Who owns the car? Not you. You just have title where you can transfer it, but you don't own it. So something's wrong. And again, I don't have a problem with them owning everything. Just take the responsibility too. And if they say, well, I'm responsible, well, then give me the original title and then I'll be responsible for everything. Whatever, paying taxes or whatever the laws are required. You can't have life both ways, folks, and that's my big issue with this. Because everything I do, if I want to live in any kind of society with people, it's going to require a name. I'm going to have to, quote unquote, they consider the word drive a car or a vehicle a thing of commerce. Well, if I'm going for a pleasant ride, I really don't look at that as a thing of commerce. If I drive to work, well, I guess you can consider that commerce. But really, how am I going to do? Walk or take a horse? It just, none of it makes sense. But they're capitalizing on everything. Everything vests and benefits to the state. Well, it's not necessarily benefiting a fictitious corporate entity. Who does it benefit? It benefits the judges, it benefits the politicians, it benefits the lot. Where are regular people in all this? Anyway, I think I was up to 6. So yeah, I'm up to number 7. Sorry to go off on the side there. It just I'm trying to explain this and get my head still wrapped around all this. It's not easy. It just seems it all goes in a circle. They benefit, and then we're liable. Something's wrong with this. And again, no problem. Benefit. What do you want me to say? Number 7, to conceal or fail to disclose that registration of the birth event with the corporate state is voluntary, and threatening to penalize those who fail to volunteer is deceit, dishonesty, bad faith, and breach of fiduciary duty. Number 8, to obtain informed consent on a dead piece of paper under false pretense through non-full disclosure of the registering of the birth event to parents unaware of the consequences of such consent, thereby usurping, seizing and confiscating such natural inherent rights freely given to that newborn baby by her creator, where the state has accepted and received a person through a name, a factitious entity created by a doctor, D-O-C-K, next part, T-O-R, upon birth, B-E-R-T-H, who created a record or document, and of course you know that has to do with docking a ship, a vessel, blah, blah, it's under admiralty. A document within upon birth who created a record or document within hospitality, as Boris would say, where a future interest was created and everything done in that name automatically vests and benefits the state, and then not paying said person, or at a minimum not having authorized public trustees discharge any and all obligations against said name by and through a user-FRUC compliant certified certificate, as the income or profits generated from said hypothecated private property confiscated is theft or stealing, deceit, dishonesty, bad faith, and a breach of fiduciary duty. Number 9, to impose or attempt to impose penal statutes under martial law, rule of corporate body politic against a man exercising his natural inherent rights, for example, the right to travel, who is not consciously joined to be a member of the corporate body politic, where such said impositions or attempt to impose is politically motivated and or for personal profit and gain against the state of New York Supreme Court. I don't know where I put that. That's the heading on the bottom. Let me reread that. Where such said imposition or attempt to impose is politically motivated and or for personal profit and gain against one of the prosperity and beneficiary of the public corporate trust, the United States is misconduct in public office, deceit, dishonesty, bad faith, a criminal act, and breach of fiduciary duty. Something's missing in that sentence. Doesn't matter. Number 10, acts in breach of fiduciary duty by public officers give rise to personal liability of public officers. Acts of public officers, fiduciaries which unjustly enrich said officers or a third party give rise to a constructive trust in favor of the beneficiaries for restoration and restitution. Acts in breach of fiduciary duty are cause for removal of office. Further, pursuant to Section 4 of the 14th Amendment, assumption or payment of any debt, obligation, or claim such as wages or pensions by any state to a fiduciary in insurrection or rebellion against the Constitution is illegal and void. Individual respondents named in this complaint, Mark Fleischer, Andrew Como, Thomas D. Napoli, and Eric Schneiderman, are public officers. One who holds public office is a public officer. 63C American Jurisprudence 2D Public Officers and Employees, Section 9. Under 5 CFR 2635.101, Basic Obligations of Public Service. So let me repeat that. 5 CFR 2635.101. And it goes on. I'm not going to read that. You can look that up. but just quickly, public service is a public trust. Public service is a public trust. Employees shall not hold financial interests that conflict with the conscientious performance of duty. It goes on, it's like 14 different things. And then I go on, in addition to the standards of ethical conduct set forth in this part, there are conflict of interest statutes that prohibit certain conduct. Criminal conduct conflict of interest statutes of general applicability to all employees, 18 U.S.C. 201, 203, 205, 208, and 209, are summarized in the appropriate subparts of this part and must be taken into consideration in determining whether the conduct is proper. Citations to other generally applicable statutes relating to employee conduct are set forth in subpart 1, and employees are further cautioned that there may be additional statutory and regulatory restrictions applicable to them generally or as employees of their specific agencies. Because an employee is considered to be on notice of the requirements of any statute, an employee should not rely upon any description or synopsis of a statutory restriction, but should refer to how the statute itself and obtain the advice of an agency ethics official as needed. I think I'm going to stop here for now. The next section is going to be individual respondent public officers or fiduciaries of the public trust.